To point out too that the Warriors since the All-Star break are undefeated. Like they, last time I was on here, I think we talked about how this team could flip a switch and just turn it on. But one thing about the Rockets that's going to separate them from the Warriors, and I talked to someone within their organization just this week, but it was we're hungry. Like this team is as hungry as that person has seen the Rockets in recent years. And if you're looking for some kind of separation between the Rockets and the Warriors, it's that hunger. Right now, Golden State, they believe in themselves. They're a great team, but are they as hungry as Houston? I don't think so. This is going to be their fourth year, potentially, going to the finals, going for another championship. This Rockets team has James Harden, who still remembers the San Antonio series from last year. They've got Chris Paul, who hasn't been out of the second round of the playoffs. These guys are in their prime type players who recognize the potential greatness of this team. They're a top 10 defense for the first time in a very long time. So I think they do have a real chance to knock them off.
And the Rockets, I'm sure, right now value the 1 seed more than Golden State.
Yes.
Even though Golden State's had the 1 seed every year, I think it's important to them. I'm in the minority and say I think it would be important to them, not that they think it's important, I should say. I'm in the minority there. I think people feel like Golden State, wherever they're at in the bracket, they're going to be the favorites. Houston, I think, looks at that as a line of demarcation. Like, okay, we beat you in the season series, which they already did.
Yep.
We could get the 1 seed. Like, those are different things that matter to them. And you mentioned Harden. Harden is going to win the MVP this year. He would pass a polygraph right now saying, yeah, it should be my third in the last 4 years, actually. Like, they do have a guy who walks on the court with Golden State and says, guess who's got the best player? We do, because it's me. Because I know he feels like I've been the best player in this league for the last 4 years. And so 2 second-place MVP finishes, going to win this year.
You said that the Rockets are hungry. Is it that they're hungry, or is it that Golden State now they've done it? They know how to pace themselves a little better. They don't have to be hungry every single night. They have to be hungry when it's time to be hungry.
I think there certainly could be truth to that. I think Golden State has had, at times, a rough time getting up for these mid-season games, but you combine the Rockets' hunger with the talent that they have on that roster, particularly on the defensive side of the ball now. I mean, guys like Clint Capella, their record with Clint Capella, James Harden, and Chris Paul, 32-1 this season with those 3 guys in the lineup. That screams something. And look, we can't dismiss the regular season results, because last year, San Antonio, I think they beat them a couple of times during the regular season. Now, the Spurs wound up getting swept in the conference finals, but that was entirely because Kawhi Leonard missed that series. Kawhi Leonard, if he had played that whole series, I think San Antonio could have won that series. And the Rockets, the way they've played Golden State this season, we can't just sit back and say, well, it's Golden State sort of pacing themselves, biding their time. This Rockets team is for real. If Golden State didn't exist, the Rockets would be Golden State. The Rockets would be the boogeyman that everybody is terrified of.
And I think if Golden State wasn't there, I think that we'd see some complacency on Houston's side, because a sense of accomplishment, like, you can't take that for granted. Golden State has that. They've earned that. Now, I just believe the second half of the season, which I did predict, they are undefeated. I believe they will be focused, because you're only talking about 20 to 25 games. And I believe that the home court, it's in Houston's advantage to have it, but Golden State, when you have home court advantage, Golden State is saying, can we win one of the first 2 games there? They're like, of course we can. So if you're able to do that, then the home court is able to switch back. Now, my thing is, what if Houston has home court and Golden State wins one of those first 2 games? Is Houston mentally prepared now to be able to go back to Golden State and be able to flip it back? So I just believe the home court is very, very important to Houston. More important than it is than Golden State, but I believe down the stretch, Golden State will be just as motivated as we've seen the last 3 years.
And I know that you guys both mentioned they're undefeated since the All-Star break are the Warriors. Obviously, the Rockets are on a 15-game winning streak, Warriors on a 5. But these games, so Saturday night, while you were at the fight, actually, Golden State's playing Atlanta, one of the worst teams in the league. Atlanta was begging to get blown out, and Golden State just wouldn't do it. But they're up 11 with 2.5 minutes. I'm like, okay, it's going to be game over. And even in that, you just need to focus for 90 seconds. And then all of a sudden, it's Atlanta ball down 3 with 20 seconds, a chance to force overtime. And each game does matter if you're going for the 1 seed. Now, Iguodala made a great play, got a steal and a dunk. While that was going on, Houston was in the midst of a spectacular final moments comeback against a Celtics team that knows, like, that was playing as if this is as big of a game as we'll play in all year.
Future finals team.
Oh, yeah, exactly right, of course. And so I just, in this winning streak, they're beating teams by an average of 14 points per 100 possessions. Like, they are blowing people out.
I think they've only had a handful of games that have been decided by 3 points or less. They have not had to play those tough games. And that's to their credit. I mean, look, you're right, Chris, about the, what happens when they lose to a champion in the conference final. This is not a team that's had to dig deep like that. Yes, James Harden has been in the finals, but he was one of the supporting players of that team. You mentioned Chris Paul, never been in that situation.
And even in that final, didn't have a great final.
Right. A kid, though, was he like 20, 21 years old? I mean, going up against...
It's in the memory bank, though.
Yeah. But what's also in the memory bank here is that's a Rockets team that I think hears everything. They hear all the outside noise.
No
they hear
doubt.
James Harden hears...
And I think that starts from management.
Yeah.
And Del Morey says, listen, we're
obsessed
with Golden State. It goes through the franchise. Now, sometimes people look at it as a benefit, but when you get in tough situations, like one loss in a series, where does that put their psyche?
Well, and one last point, as far as when we talk about the 1 versus the 2 seed. The first round matchup as well. Either of these teams are going to be heavily favored in the first round. But if you're the 1 seed, you're probably getting Denver or the Clippers in the first round. If you're the 2 seed, it's likely either Minnesota or Oklahoma City. Minnesota with Jimmy Butler back. Oklahoma City with all that talent. Like, it just makes your entire path at least slightly more difficult along the way.
And potentially a second-round matchup with Portland, which I don't think anybody wants at this
They're high on Portland.
Blazers right now playing good ball.
All right, Chris, stick around. We're going to see you a little bit later in the program. Coming up, the World